Hey guys, I'm so sorry. I got a new debit card and forgot to update the debit card in my internet account. So I had not paid my internet bill. So let's see. I'm trying to find, let me see if I can find Tucker on here. Why can I not invite him? Thanks for being patient. Not on live. Okay. Okay, well, hopefully he'll join and request I'm so sorry. That was totally my fault. Like, I noticed that my internet wasn't working that well, but I turned my router box or Wi-Fi box, whatever it's called, off and back on, and finally it said no. I turned my router box or Wi-Fi box, whatever it's called, off and back on, and finally it said no internet. Paid my bill. I had not paid my bill. So let's see. Hopefully Tucker. I didn't text him. I texted him and said, my internet's not working. I didn't pay my bill. Give me a minute. And I think Texas Dad Lawyer was having to leave to go to church at 7:30. So I don't think he's going to be joining us, but Tucker will be here. Give me just a minute. Let me see if I can text him. Tucker. Isn't the podcast awesome? It's so good. Oh, he doesn't have, I forgot he doesn't have an iPhone, so I can't text him on that backup. I do not have a podcast, not at this time. Hang on, let me swipe up, guys, and let me text Tucker. I do not have a podcast, not at this time. Hang on, let me swipe up, guys, and let me text Tucker. I do not have a podcast, not at this time. Hang on, let me swipe up, guys, and let me text Tucker. Okay, you want to join? Okay, I'll invite Tucker. Texas Dad Law, y'all. I cannot speak tonight. I need to take a deep breath. Texas Dad Lawyer, do you want to join for just a little bit?
Oh, I see you. Freeze frame. Did you give permissions? I see just the icon. Or maybe she needs to do something.
I can hear you, Tucker.
All right.
Or I can hear somebody.
Wait, hold
Texas
on.
Dad Lawyer was having to run out to church at 7:30, so I'm not sure if he's going to be on or not. But I'm here finally. Got my bill paid.
How are you, True Crime Mama?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm here. Can't complain.
All right, I think Texas Dad Lawyer is going to come up for a little bit. Let me see if I can invite him. I'm still like learning how to do all of this live stuff. Okay. All right. So he'll just be here for a little bit, and then he's going to leave out, and then you'll be back.
Y'all give me for a few minutes, and then Jesus gets the rest of my time. So I don't know that you have too many legal components, but I've got into episode 3 of the podcast, Tucker, and you are a wonderful journalist, and you have quite the story, and I can't wait to probably binge the rest of it tonight.
Yes.
Oh, well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate the invitation from you, True Crime Mama, and all the support.
Well, we're really glad to have you and excited for you to tell whatever you want to tell. I'm sure there's a lot of people on here that haven't had a chance to listen to the podcast. A lot have, because I'm seeing comments saying that everybody's loving it. I just finished episode 6 earlier, and I'm excited to hear episode 7.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Yeah.
I bet it is.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought that you could just pretty much start from the beginning, just kind of tell Donna's story, and then go into whatever you would like to talk about from there. A little bit about the podcast. If you want to give a few spoilers out for the ones who have not yet listened, I'm not asking you to give us any information for episode 7, but I'm sure
Yeah, I
there's
can do
like
that.
almost 600 people in here, which is a lot.
Oh, I love hearing that. I mean, our motivation for this whole thing was getting the word out about Donna's case and seeing the reaction, seeing the numbers of people listening, and the comments on social media has been incredible. But to your point, Donna, my background is in reality TV production, and in 2020, I had the opportunity to take on a new case. And a few years before that, I had kind of discovered my passion for investigations and that sort of thing. So the investigation began very differently. It wasn't about Donna's case, but one of my sources in my initial investigation told me, you should look into Donna Arceneaux's case. And they did not know that she was married to my uncle back in the early 2000s.
Okay.
So I kept quiet for a while, dug around, requested information before anyone knew that this was a journalist or whatever you want to call me, digging in. And it became very clear that she had not self-canceled. So we shifted gears immediately, and the other investigation is still ongoing, but we shifted gears for Donna's case. And, I knew her growing up. We would hang out. She had a salon, and she used to cut my hair and test out her ear candling system on me, and like all these really crazy experiences we had together. And I just felt like, knowing where I'm from and knowing Washington Parish, it just became clear that nothing was going to happen if someone didn't do something. And this isn't about me, but I felt like in that moment, if I don't do it, who else is going to look at this case? So we worked behind the scenes for several years without making anything public. It just takes a long time to convince people to talk.
So what year did you start? 2020?
2020 is when I first contacted Donna's sister Sherry and her brother TJ and my uncle who was married to her. So it just took a long time, getting court records and getting autopsy reports and convincing sources that I'm trustworthy and they can talk to me. And I think in a small town like Washington Parish and Franklinton, people, they thrive on knowing information and sharing it with their friends. But when someone like me comes along, they freak out.
Yeah.
So I had to, work hard to gain trust. And so that's what took so long. And here we are. I think I can't arrest people. And I think a lot of listeners are asking me and sending me DMs, well, when's there going to be an arrest? I wish I knew, but it's not my job. My job is to put the information out there, air it all out, which upsets a lot of people, a lot of people that I know personally. So that's been interesting. But, the only way I know how to help is to put the information out there. So that's what we're doing.
Right. Well, you're doing a fantastic job. I'm just going to write some questions down that I have while you're talking.
Okay.
Well, one thing before I leave that I would like to mention is that, this situation where there's been possibly a staged unaliving is not uncommon in the criminal justice system. I mean, it's quite common. And we've even prosecuted cases where we have people who have staged it, and we've been able, based on the evidence, to show that that's not possible that this person did this to themselves based on the placement of the gun or where the rope is and the length of the rope and all sorts of things like that. The evidence-based prosecution is obviously always the way to go. But a lot of times what you see, and what I'm seeing in the first 3 episodes of the podcast, it's also similar to what I'm seeing in Nikki's case that I'm starting to work and create content on, is this interference with what is, in a court of law, improper or inadmissible character evidence. This idea of somebody, especially when it comes to female victims, based on relationships and this human condition, whether it's looking out for a friend in a small town community or the fact that, well, this person was such an emotional person. We knew her as such an emotional person, and straying away from following the evidence, strictly the evidence, the forensic evidence, and start letting that human bias impact them. And when somebody, especially law enforcement, have made up their mind that that confirmation bias that comes into play and what is referred to by defense attorneys as tunnel vision, it is a real thing. And having been a prosecutor who has worked with law enforcement officers on search warrants, especially in cases that involve SA, where these law enforcement officers are like, this little girl, I did juvenile work for a while. This little girl's lying about what this boy did to her. She's saying that he coerced her in this way or that way. Well, lo and behold, you get the Snapchat back, and all of a sudden you see the threats, and the little girl was telling the truth the whole time. But the point that I'm getting at is you have this human element that's unpredictable, and yet they are able. Though there's very few individuals that have the control and power and able to bring the case forward, right? And it's very, I'm sure you've seen it. It's very real. It's a very real thing that can detract from a true, just forensic, evidence-based investigation, just all the human elements at play.
For sure, yeah. And the issue, to your point, the issue with Donna's case is the lead investigator was saying it was suicide before he ever arrived on scene. So
It's okay.
yeah, I caught myself
It's okay.
too late, though.
I know you did, and you will. You'll get better with it.
But there are a lot of things that weren't tested in the beginning, and so all these cover-up theories and things start coming out, and it has really muddied the water. And people are so focused on certain points, like you say, they're down the rabbit hole, and that's all they can think about. But the facts don't support it. So even in my case, and in the episodes that have been released, there's a lot of folks who have opinions about certain people mentioned. Michelle is one of them, the spiritual counselor. In later episodes, we'll go into some of the more details about Michelle and what people think of her. But when you see the facts of the case, she was on a flight, and that's easy to verify.
Yeah.
But because of the reputation that, whether it's earned or not, people really are focused on her. And that's I think, for state police and for the Washington Parish Sheriff's Office, that kind of it hurt the case because there was so much focus on that in the beginning.
I'm just watching comments. Okay, so there are probably people in here who don't know any background at all, because I see a lot of comments saying, where can we watch this? So if you will just give us a little bit of background, just give us Donna's story. I guess just pick up with her death.
Yeah, so Donna was dating an individual, and she was in financial trouble. She had kidney issues, and her day spa was, she couldn't take clients because she was sick. And from my understanding, the person she was dating didn't really want her to work and didn't want her to see certain people. So eventually her business just fell apart, and she was going into foreclosure. I believe she had 30 days to pay her mortgage in full. And the person she was dating at the time agreed to buy the home for $108,000 and X whatever. Her understanding, based on what she told her loved ones, is once she got back on her feet, she would pay him the mortgage, a lower rate, so that she could afford it. And then once she got back on her feet, she would still have the home. Well, based on what Donna told people close to her, as soon as he purchased the home, he became very controlling, didn't want her to leave, put cameras up at the house, put a tracker on her truck, and she felt trapped. So Donna had a history of collecting information. If you listen to episode 2, she had a very difficult upbringing. Some ungodly, grotesque things happened to her as a child, and that stayed with her, as her sister Sherry said. And she always had collateral. If she was ever backed into a corner, she had something she could use to get herself out of it. And I don't blame her for that. I really don't. The person she was dating, she claimed to have a video of him in a compromising situation. And it's my belief that on October 22nd or 23rd, not sure about the timeline exactly, because she wanted to stay in her home and she felt like she couldn't, she made the comment to a loved one that if I'm losing my home, he's losing his reputation. And just a few hours later, she was found in her home with GSW, the lower left breast. And the sheriff's office in town came to the scene, but the lead investigator thought immediately that it was self-cancellation before he got there. And there was an argument about bringing the crime lab to the scene because the chief investigator thought it was a self-cancellation. The other investigators thought this is a stage scene. You can tell there's something taken from the bed. Like there's no way the blood got down the hall, like all this stuff. So it started as a questionable situation. And throughout the investigation, there were so many different detectives with the Washington Parish Sheriff's Office who got the case. And from my understanding, most of them were taken off the case because they weren't agreeing with the chief investigator. And, unfortunately, this person has a long career. A lot of folks really respect them. But there are also a lot of cases of self-cancellations that he's been a part of that are very questionable. So the family lost faith in the Washington Parish Sheriff's Office. And just before an election, they went to the sheriff and said, it's in your best interest, if you want to win this election, to give the case to the state police. Because we do not trust you. We don't trust the integrity of the office. So the state police took it over. And 4 or 5 years later now, we still have no answers or arrests. I believe at the state police, there's been at least 5 different investigators on the case, whether it be they left or they retired or whatever. As early as the end of September, beginning of October, and new investigators on the case. They are interviewing people, but I think from my perspective, knowing what's happened in the case for 7 years, I respect law enforcement, but I have my reservations.
Yeah. Will you tell us a little bit about the scene and why it was obvious that it was not self-cancellation?
Yes. So at the end of episode 6, you hear that on my drive home to Tennessee from Louisiana, we received an anonymous upload of a lot of files. And I will tell you, seeing the photos of the crime scene I even say in episode 7, it's hard to even explain what that's like.
Yeah.
I've seen that before on other cases, but as someone that I knew in a case that I'm so deep into, it was very difficult.
Yeah.
And so you walk in the back door and the house is honestly in shambles. The laundry room's full of like things in baskets. You go into the kitchen and there are 4 really thick boneless pork chops in freezer bags, defrosted in the sink. There are dinner rolls on a baking sheet on the counter. And when you go into the living room, there's evidence marker number 1 with a blood droplet on the floor. And then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And then you get to her bedroom door and it doesn't sit well because I'm not a professional investigator, but anyone can look at this scene and see that something's not right. The firearm used to unalive Donna was on the bed. On the left side of the bed, Donna is on the right side of the bed on the floor in front of the nightstand. There are 2 shell casings, one next to a dresser on the left side of the bed, one jammed in the chamber, which I've now learned is called a stovepipe, which indicates that it was blocked. whenever the second round was fired,
Okay.
which is important because the pathologist says that when the second round was fired, because of the trajectory of the bullet, it went through so many organs. Her legs had to have been over her head in order for those organs to be up into her chest cavity. So it's my opinion. My legal team has said I have to say my opinion a lot. It's my opinion that no one would self-cancel with their legs over their head with no clothes on. Just, it doesn't make sense. So
Tucker, I gotta run, but I want to give just a few thoughts before I run. It's not one, in addition to that point, it's not usual for anybody who's engaging in that act to be able to ever fire a second shot, period. Right? It's just not the pain and the experience that you're going through. You're not pulling a second trigger, and that doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things that don't make sense based on a little that I know forensically. But one of the things that you mentioned that was mentioned in episode 3 that really stuck out to me was the behavior that was observed of the possible suspect by, I believe is it Michelle?
Yep.
Who went to the house, and the fact is some of the things that he did, even though he had a key, and just the way that he was acting, are kind of telltale as well. If you're looking at it on the totality standard of somebody who is not acting in conformity with how they would typically when they're encountering that person. And I think that those behaviors are also very strong evidence, circumstantial evidence of possible foul play. There's a few things that have slipped my mind, but I gotta run. I hope that I can do a live with y'all by the time that I finish the podcast, or the podcast is completely finished with however many episodes there will be, and circle back around with my thoughts. But I do want to say I can resonate with you what it's like to have to see autopsy photos, period, and let alone on somebody that's close. I was a career prosecutor before I was a defense attorney, and I spent the last 4 months of my career in a very contentious, trial where a child had his life taken. So I know what that's like, and I've supported, victims' families day in and day out as they had to sit there in a courtroom and see those things. And I know what a labor of love it must have been for you to uncover the truth over the years and have to see those things, and just how hard that is. So my heart goes out to you. I don't ever want to forget. I don't want people to forget that, like, as interesting as this is, these are real people and these are real emotions, and this is really something that's important to you and your family and your community, and we got to respect that. It's more than just your amazing work. It's your heart that's been poured into it. And I just want to say, I really hope that Donna gets justice, and you've just done a great job. So I hope to speak with you again and provide more thoughts, but I'm going to run to church. Okay.
All right. Appreciate
Good night.
it.
Thank you for joining us.
Yep. Good night, y'all.
Awesome. Okay.
Oh, he's great.
He really is. He's awesome. Okay, so let's start back with the scene and why it was clearly not a self-cancellation.
So Donna was on the right side of the bed on the floor, and her arms were in a position that suggests she didn't do this to herself and then fall off the bed. I'm trying not to be too graphic. And next to her bed, I would say 3 or 4 feet on the right side of the bed is the door to the bathroom. And in that bathroom was a white towel with blood on it. However, if she had done this to herself and ran to the bathroom to get a towel, it would be drenched with blood from her lower left breast. And it was more so scattered with almost as if like you wiped your hands or something. However, when the state police crime lab went back in with Detective Jimmy Rice, who you hear in the podcast,
Right.
They sprayed luminol, or it may not have been luminol. It was some other
Something similar.
Yeah, something similar.
Yeah.
And it showed evidence of cleanup. Um, so in my mind, there's no way to explain self-cancellation in your bed, which we know is true because there was a hole from the projectile into the mattress, and it was recovered by the crime lab. There were DNA, or her DNA was on the fibers of the mattress, which is my understanding. I don't have the case file; it's under lock and key. But so I don't know how you explain doing that to yourself in the bed, walking into the kitchen, which explains the blood droplets down the hall, coming back to the bedroom, going to the bathroom, bleeding out, cleaning it all up, disposing of the towels somehow that no one ever found,
Right.
and then going back to lay back, next to the bed.
Right. And remind me what she was wearing, because I know that was a big topic. People were saying that if she had done that to herself, she would have made sure that she looked good doing so.
Yeah, I mean, she was, as beautiful as you can get, and she was very aware of her looks. And unfortunately, when she was found, she had only a camo T-shirt on, nothing else from belly button down. And her sister has told me, if she was going to do this to herself, she would have been in a bubble bath with candles and a glass of red wine. So yeah, that's how she was found.
All right, and let's talk. Hang on, let me write this question down because I actually had the same question. Okay. The object that was missing, that had the 90-degree object that had the blood around the where the object had been. What did it say in the podcast that I think it was it Demi that gave a couple of options, maybe a cell phone or?
Yeah, I mean, so on the bed where the firearm was, fired, and where she allegedly self-canceled, there's very little blood. But so imagine the firearm is on the left side of the bed. A foot or two from that towards the right is a 90-degree angle. And it's not like, a basic 90-degree angle. I mean, it's a sharp 90-degree.
Okay.
And then a few inches from that is where the projectile entered the mattress. That 90-degree angle, in my opinion, is likely something to do with the video that she claimed to have, or some sort of document about the purchase of the home and how she was going to get it back. It's hard to really know. It's all speculation.
Okay.
But Demi did say that among the conversation, among detectives at that time, maybe it was a phone or an iPad or a laptop. However, when you see the photo of that 90-degree angle, it's so precise. I believe it may have been a photo or a document, because it looks like the edge of a page of some kind. And speaking to some of the experts that we've consulted, I think it's most likely a contact mark. So whatever that item was had blood on it, and it hit the bed and created that line. Because it's the inside, like the 90-degree angle, it's the inside of the angle. It's not the outside of it.
Okay.
So if there was something on the bed and then blood got over it, it would be on the outside.
So it's the inside that had the blood.
It's the inside of the 90-degree angle with the blood. I don't think we've actually shared that before. But
no, because I had it in my mind pictured like it was something laying on the bed and then blood went over it and around it. And so
no, it's the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. All right, a few questions, and I don't know if I guess you've said this, but I can't really remember. and this is just super basic, but the sheriff's office ruled it self-cancellation, released a statement to the newspaper who printed that that's what it was. But the medical examiner that did the autopsy said it was definitely homicide.
100%.
And none of those, neither of those parties have ever really changed their stance on that.
Well, it's interesting. I don't want to go off on a tangent. I think in the podcast, I know I hound on the newspaper article, but it really is it was a turning point in the case because people just forgot about it.
Sure.
As of today, I could tell you the newspaper has released a retraction based on information in the podcast. It happened the day after episode 1 released on October 1st.
Okay.
First of all, it was never ruled a self-cancellation, ever. There's not a single document anywhere that says that. Okay. I believe the administration of the sheriff's office was careless, to say the least. Because if it was just, if the investigators, let's say the investigators did believe that it was a self-cancellation, maybe there were 2 of them. That means there were many others who did not believe that. And so releasing that information during an ongoing investigation was not helpful in any way. The newspaper, it's a very small community paper. They don't have a lot of resources. So I do not hold it against Mr. Steve at all. I understand the position he's in, and the information he receives is very important to filling the pages of the paper and all that.
I understand that 100%.
Yeah. But if, from the sheriff's office perspective, the family reached out, a very specific member of the family was really hitting them hard and the paper hard for a retraction and just got nowhere. So my question for them has always been, and I've never gotten a straight answer, if it was just a mistake, why wouldn't you have corrected it to save all of this trouble? Because now everyone thinks you covered it up.
Right.
And you went 7 years without ever correcting it. So either they brought this upon themselves because of pride and they just didn't want to correct it, or there's something more sinister going on that I think we might get to the bottom of eventually.
I hope so. Okay, I'm trying to read comments, but they're going by so fast.
I haven't even looked. It's like there's a lot going on.
I wasn't sure if you could see them or not. People are
I can see
saying
them, yeah.
they love you, they love the podcast, you're doing a great job. Santana, yes, he does. He did get the crime scene photos, correct? I'm assuming that was the
I do have some crime scene photos, but my understanding is there are hundreds more.
Wow.
That we do not have. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Somebody said, you said earlier that there is an individual who had a lot of other questionable self-cancellations with people around them or they were involved with. Were you meaning the boyfriend, or did you mean like just law enforcement that were ruled?
So I was talking about Tom, the lead investigator at the time of Donna's death.
Okay.
There's one case, not to get off on a tangent, but there's another case in Louisiana. It was a 14-year-old named Brett Whitner, and Tom was the first responding officer, and his case has been in limbo for over a decade because they say he accidentally fired on himself in the back of the head with a rifle. And the new sheriff in Washington Parish has taken up that case and advocated, and they've exhumed his remains. And so there's a massive process going on in the last couple months to resolve that case.
Okay.
And that was a case that the same lead investigator who was on Donna's, he became lead investigator during the Whitner case. And that's just one example of, I believe we have 8 or 10 at this point that people have sent us that do seem pretty wild. And I'm not saying that there are families who just don't want to accept the fact that someone may have done this to themselves.
True.
However, when there's such an onslaught, and with the things that I've uncovered about this particular investigator, it's questionable.
And you think that it was like an intentional cover up, or do you think that it was just like ineffective training, didn't really know what they were doing, or a little bit of both? Or you don't have to answer.
I think it might be a little bit of both. I mean, I'll speak in hypotheticals. I think if anyone has led a life of secrets in some way,
Mm-hmm.
but people in power know what those are,
Mm-hmm.
it just creates the space to push things off, or skew the truth, or not tell the full story. But on the other hand, under the previous sheriff's administration, it's my understanding that there was a very high lack of training,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially, I'll say again, potentially forging information to get someone into FBI Academy. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on under the previous administration that makes you question everything. And
Right, sure.
it sounds like conspiracies, but unfortunately in small town Louisiana,
Yeah.
anything
What's
can
the
happen.
population of Franklinton?
It's about 3,600.
Okay.
The parish is about 45,000 in total.
Okay.
Very rural.
Really similar. Yeah, really similar to where I live. So I get it.
Yep.
I'm just curious. All right. So back to the position of her body with her legs being above her head. Someone wanted to know, was the general consensus that she was being SA'd or that she was fighting someone off?
I believe she was fighting someone off.
Okay.
There was an SA kit done during the autopsy. Unfortunately, we haven't found the results of that, but Demi, who worked the case for a short period, says there was no evidence of SA.
Okay.
I think just based on how it happened and the point at which the projectile entered, it's pretty clear that it was very close contact,
Mhm.
and if her legs were above her head, like the pathologist suggests, I just can't imagine a scenario other than a fight
Right.
that would get her in that situation with a firearm pressed against her breast.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
Someone just asked, was there DNA under her fingernails?
So there were swabs taken during the autopsy. Fingernail clippings were taken. Unfortunately, again, we don't have the case file. That's a whole nother story. But my understanding is no. However, in the photos that we received, the condition of her fingers it makes you wonder, are they waterlogged or is it just decomposition? And I hate to be so graphic.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, this is a true crime page, so.
Yeah, so who knows what happened? I mean, it's my belief there was a minimum 12-hour span of when she passed and when they allegedly found her.
Right.
So there's really no telling what happened in that time. And that's what's so frustrating in my position is, we tried to go about this the right way and get the case file. Not that we're going about it the wrong way, it's just more difficult this way. But a few days later, after requesting that, it suddenly had a detective with the state police assigned, and it was all of a sudden active again, which means we can't get the records. So it's just made our jobs much more difficult. But to answer your question again, no, there's not a definitive answer about DNA under her nails.
Okay. Someone asked about, let's see. I'm assuming that they were asking about if anyone was swabbed for gunshot residue. And I believe in episode 6, what is he? Is he the investigator? The chief of criminal investigations? Is he the one that told you that there was no evidence, but said that the person could have showered, cleaned off, changed clothes before they called law enforcement?
Yeah, so that is Tom. He was the lead investigator at the sheriff's office at that time.
Okay.
And
Is it just his word that there was no gunshot residue, or have you actually seen proof of that? I'm assuming that's in the file you don't have.
Yeah, I have not seen proof of it, but I can tell
Okay.
you, based on the sources that I have at the sheriff's office who worked the case,
Mhm.
they say they have never seen a photo of the suspect's body. But in episode 6, you hear Tom say that he went to the house with him, watched him change
Watched him.
clothes, took photos, whatever. I mean, aside from the photos, I've spoken to Demi about this a lot, and it's completely against procedure to take a potential suspect to their home and let them change. And
Yeah.
it's evident in how they treated Michelle. Like, Michelle was taken to the station immediately, or to the sheriff's office immediately, and her clothes were taken there.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason, the other suspect, Donna's boyfriend, was taken to his home. Tom's version of the story is that he went inside with him and he watched him change.
Right.
People who worked the case at that time say that Tom told them he stayed in the car and let the suspect go inside. No matter what version of the story is true, both are concerning because he went to his home, and for whatever reason, there was never a search warrant on that home.
Mm-hmm. Right. Correct. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
Now you're saying suspect. Has this person ever officially been a suspect, or?
So law enforcement has never publicly named a suspect.
Person of
But
interest?
I can tell you, in every file I've received and we've reviewed, and every source that we have at the state police and the Washington Parish Sheriff's Office and the DA's office even, there's a consensus about who is responsible.
Okay.
It's my belief there's someone else involved as well, because when Demi finally got the case, the sheets and the bedspread.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Demi, I know you're watching. I forget exactly. My brain's kind of mush tonight.
Hey,
Either
Demi.
the bedspread or the sheets were never sent to the crime lab. And so when Demi got the case, she sent those to the crime lab, and there were 3 DNAs found: Donna's, her boyfriend Scott's, and an unidentified white male.
Interesting.
Now, if you've listened to the podcast, you know that Donna may have had someone over and was, hanging out, and their DNA is on the sheets and had nothing to do with it.
Right.
But it's also possible that whoever was there was involved in her death. So
Very interesting.
mm-hmm.
Phone records. Did they ever get phone records? And I'm assuming again that's something that you haven't seen, but do you know if that information was subpoenaed and received?
Yeah, so they had Donna's phone, they had Scott's phone. I actually believe Donna had 2 phones. One of them was not in service, but they have the phones, and Demi actually was the detective at the time who went through the suspects, or one of the suspects' phones, Scott's phone, and did the phone dump. And there was a lot of information on those. However, the geolocations, typically that's really valuable, obviously, in phone data. But because Donna's house was on Highway 16 and Scott built his barn dominium, or whatever you want to call it, 100 yards behind her, the geolocations were almost identical. So it's really difficult to tell where they're at.
Yeah.
And I think they were relying on that in the beginning, and then realized it's hard to know which property they were actually at.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
But there were texts and things that were pretty revealing. There are allegations that Donna did threaten to self-cancel on Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
And there's allegations that she threatened that before. But based on what I've seen and many other detectives and third parties, the facts of the scene don't fit that.
Remind me, those threats that she allegedly made to self-cancel, were those verbal? Did she tell someone that on the phone, or were those text messages?
So the only instance I know for sure I've heard rumors and things from her boyfriend's current girlfriend on social media that she threatened the night before. However, in 2012, her ex-husband Clay claims to have received a photo of Donna with a firearm in her hand.
Yeah, I
I
remember
have never
that.
seen that photo. I've never spoken to anyone who can vividly tell me what was in that photo. So to be honest with you, I'm a little bit skeptical if that photo exists.
Hmm.
Because at the time, Donna was telling people that her ex-husband made that claim as part of a custody battle. He denies that,
Right.
and
Okay.
he has been thoroughly investigated in her death. So it's hard to know. I do believe that she did threaten, though, because whether it be for attention or
Right. Yeah.
whatever the motive, I do believe she did because I know she was going through a mental health battle on several occasions.
Hmm. Okay. Back to the DNA, the third set of DNA, was that put through CODIS or try to
That's my
get?
understanding. And there was
Okay.
no match.
There was no match. Okay.
There is one individual in particular that I'm hesitant to say I am convinced, but I believe that it might be a match. It's just going to take some time.
Okay. Someone asked about a lie detector test, and in episode 6, you do mention that the boyfriend failed a lie detector test, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, he via a source, my understanding is that it was a massive failure, whatever that means.
Okay.
However, in recent social media posts, it sounds like the boyfriend is claiming he only failed one question. Again, unfortunately, sources will only tell you so much, but one way or another, the polygraph was failed, and that was clear to investigators. Obviously, or maybe not obviously to some people, but it's not admissible in court, but it's an
Correct, yeah.
investigative tool.
Yeah.
And in post-polygraph questioning, he did reveal that he went back to Donna's after he initially said he did, and he said he went to get his wallet. And during that time, their argument heated back up, and Donna pushed him out the door. But the timeline is confusing because
So the story changed.
the story changed after the polygraph.
Okay.
But it's really confusing because his children's mother called them several times on Sunday. And every time she called, 2 p.m., 4 p.m., 7 p.m., Dad was not home. So, and again, in recent social media posts, people close to him have said he was home with his kids all day, which does not fit what investigators were told in 2017, 2018.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Motive. Just heat of the moment.
Motive.
Just
Yeah. The motive, I'll start with the least probable, but it's something
Okay.
that we hear a lot.
okay.
Again, back to episode 2, Donna had a reputation. And whether you call it promiscuous or whatever, she liked the company of men. Whether she was intimate with them or not is none of my business. But I do believe there were a couple of men who were married that she may have gotten entangled with. And that theory is that one of those wives was very unhappy and did this to her.
Okay.
But when you really dig into that theory, it just doesn't make sense because how would they have a key to the house? How would they clean up so quickly without her boyfriend who lived right behind her seeing them come and go to clean up? And why isn't there DNA anywhere? I mean, sure, you can clean up a crime scene, but I mean, are you that sophisticated to not have your DNA literally anywhere?
Right. Yeah.
I guess you also got to think that maybe the investigation in the beginning wasn't handled properly. So that's theory number one. I really believe that's absolutely not true. Like that's not even a possibility based on the information I have. The other is I mean, obviously, there's a chance that she could have done this to herself in many people's eyes, but the evidence doesn't show that. So that also is kind of pushed to the side. Not to get too deep into this rabbit hole, but in my experience with Donna and her having been a member of my family, I do know that she had a history of collecting information. And she was a cosmetologist in town, and she heard a lot of things about a lot of people, and she had dirt on people, whatever you want to call it. So the next theory in my mind is believable because I know the things that she had previously. She claimed to have a video of her boyfriend in a compromising situation. And my legal team forbids me from saying anything more than that.
I understand.
But it potentially involved a family member and was very disturbing, I think is how I put it, in episode 5. I believe whether that video exists or not, based on what I know about the boyfriend and interviews we've conducted with his exes and stuff, I do believe, whether the video existed or not, that the situation she described did happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really matter if there was a video or not. Just the threat alone of exposing someone in that way, I believe, is motive enough. And I have spoken to plenty of law enforcement officials who have worked the case, and there's a consensus again that that's the most likely motive. It's also possible that there was a really bad fight.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Scott came back to her house, hypothetical, obviously, to reconcile or to continue the argument. She pulls a gun because she was feisty and wasn't going to put up with anything.
Mm-hmm.
There's an argument, there's a tussle over the gun. It, it accidentally goes off.
Right, yeah.
And then it's like, oh, dang, how am I going to explain this?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But I go back to the...
Was the weapon used hers?
I believe the weapon was purchased by her ex-husband, but it had become hers.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that's something else that's been a lot of misinformation out there. The weapon that did fire the round that unalived her was on scene.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was not a rifle. It was a handgun.
Okay.
So, and it was on the bed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. A lot of comments or questions are about the noise that Michelle heard in the house. And I guess they just want you to talk about that.
I hate to smile because it's not a funny situation, but I get so many questions about this and I wish I knew. As I say in the podcast, when Michelle told me that, I didn't put it in there because to be honest with you, I was a little bit incoherent at first because I'm like, we've spoken several times now.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, in her defense, the more you think about something like this, a traumatic situation, you remember more and more and more.
Yeah.
But she is adamant to this day that when she was in the bedroom, she heard someone drop a phone or something. One of the theories, as I explained earlier, with the unidentified male DNA, there's a chance that person was still in the house.
Right.
All the lights were off, so it would have been easy to hide in one of the bedrooms or in the former Belladonna Day Spa, which was the sunroom of the home. But I do think it's kind of stumped investigators as to who that might have been, and if she was just traumatized and thought she heard something.
Mm-hmm.
It is my personal belief, though, that this was not done by just one person.
Mm-hmm. So there very likely could have been someone hiding that she heard.
Yes, and it makes me think about when Michelle explains what happened before they entered the home and Scott walked around the house knocking on windows, but then pulled the key out of his pocket to unlock the door. I mean, in my mind, again, speculation, was that just like warning whoever was there that we're
Mhm.
here? Or
Mhm.
like, what was that about?
Mhm. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
very true. Hold up. There was a good question. Okay, somebody said, and I don't remember hearing this, but it's so much information in the podcast. I do not know how you keep it all straight.
Me either,
An
honestly.
attorney was on scene before law enforcement.
Yeah, so Michelle at the time was dating a guy named John, who was a local attorney, a former like town municipal judge. And when she got to the scene, when she landed in New Orleans from Florida, she texted him that she landed, texted him that she got the Donnas, and then several minutes later sent another text saying, please get here immediately. But before she sent that text, she called him. So let me back up. They find Donna in the bedroom. She hears the boyfriend screaming. She runs to the bedroom, freaks out. For whatever reason, she can't make a call from her phone. So she uses his phone. And in the 911 call, you can hear her on the phone and you can hear him in the background giving the address of the home. As soon as she makes that call, she runs outside. Her phone now has service outside. And this is her story. And she immediately calls her boyfriend, John, who lives a few miles away, close enough to be there in a few minutes, and says, Donna's dead. He's here. Get here now. And as soon as they hang up, she texts him and says, please get here quick. And he responds, I'm on the road. Now, I've seen the messages, so I know that version of the story does pretty much check out. However, there's an alternative theory that I'm not at liberty to share at this moment, that may explain a few more details. But at the end of the day, I think motive and access to the home points to a specific person.
Okay. All right. I think a lot of people missed you saying earlier that the weapon was a hand weapon and not something larger, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a 9mm.
Okay. I hope you guys heard that.
Was I allowed to say that? I don't know
Yeah,
the TikTok rules.
and
Yeah.
honestly, like I think I think you're probably allowed to say a lot more than you are, but sometimes you just don't know.
Right?
You know, it's
Well,
insane.
let's be careful.
It's
Yeah.
insane. Like I will have the craziest videos get violations, and then much worse videos are fine. So you just don't ever know. All right. Were there any prints on the weapon? I can't remember
Yes,
that.
there were. I don't want to share the details
Okay.
of that.
Okay.
We've shared a lot of information, but there are certain details that we don't want to make public.
Understand.
But yes, there were prints on the gun.
It's okay. It's
I
okay.
keep doing it. There
It's
were
okay.
fingerprints on the firearm.
Okay. All right. All right. This is just. Why do you think that so many people believe that it was self-cancellation? Like I just, in my mind, like I will never understand why when you were, shown all of this evidence and you still choose to believe the complete opposite. Like what's your personal opinion that, I guess I just mean like locals, not necessarily law enforcement, but just like people in the town.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to reputation, unfortunately. I mean, Donna was very well known, but also a lot of people talked about her. And unfortunately, I think if it wasn't for that reputation, this case would have gotten a lot more attention. And when I say reputation, it's not that everyone thinks that she was this terrible person. It's just the rumor mill in these small towns is so dangerous because it becomes truth.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, it becomes that, well, I've had an affair with every person that lives here, which is just flat out false.
Right.
I think the reason people think that it could have been self-cancellation is the newspaper article, which is why I spend so much time talking about it.
Okay,
Because-
people in the comments are fussing at me saying nobody believes that. But didn't you say that there are a good amount of people that still believe that?
We have had so many people reach out and say, I didn't know that this could have been, foul play. I thought.
Okay, so not necessarily that that's what they chose. That's what they chose to believe. They just were not aware that.
Right. It's just,
Okay.
we saw the newspaper and we honestly just kind of forgot about it.
Right.
Now,
Okay.
I will say, for the people in the comments, I see you. There are a lot of people who always said, this is a cover up. There's no way she did this to herself. So I was just surprised by how many people believed the newspaper article, and it just went away. And unfortunately, there's still people who believe that. Even hearing the evidence, there are still certain folks who think that I'm in this for the wrong reasons and that this is all just a sham. But I think the facts are going to pan out, and at some point they'll know that they were wrong.
I don't know if this comment is for you or if they're asking someone else. Was the SD card ever found?
That's probably in connection to the video allegations.
Okay.
I'm not going to answer that directly. I'm just going to say Donna had a history of collecting information.
I was trying to scroll up and see. What was the airport video that someone mentioned earlier?
Oh,
You were just saying it was easy to confirm.
Wait, ask that again. Sorry.
It says, what was the airport video that someone mentioned earlier? Was that you that, in
So
reference
that
to
was in episode 5.
Okay.
Yeah, her brother TJ got a call from Donna one night that someone was watching her in the wood line next to her house.
Yes. I remember that.
And she claimed to have a video of a drug deal at the local airport involving some pretty prominent community members. And to be honest with you, that really lit up some interest. And I hate to be coy, but there are reasons not to share information, but I'll tell you, there are people who have seen the video she claimed to have. At least they claim to have actually seen it. And I don't think locals would be very surprised by who was in it. And that's as much as I've said about that video. So I'm probably going to get in trouble after this is over. But
I'm sure people probably already had their minds made up on who it was.
They did.
Yeah. Let's see. I think that's all the questions that I have. For those of you who are watching and didn't catch at the beginning, the picture that I have right here is the podcast. This is Tucker's podcast, Freeze Frame, and it is about Donna Arceneaux, who was found deceased back in, it was 2017, right?
Yep.
Okay. And basically, the sheriff's office didn't really do much investigation. They said it was self-cancellation, and the medical examiner ruled it a homicide, and pretty much nothing has happened with the case in all these years. So the podcast Freeze Frame it tells Donna's story, and Tucker does the podcast, and he does a fantastic job. So if you're following or you're watching this and you have not started the podcast, download it and start listening to it. You will probably binge it. You'll probably stay awake all night listening. That's all I'm going to say. It's awesome. It is so good. I was trying to see if there were any other bigger comments, because I know I miss comments all the time because they just fly by.
I don't know how you do this. I'm trying to catch up and I can't read one until the next one pops up.
I mean, look, the night that I don't even remember. I think at one point in time there was 17 or 18,000 people watching, and I can't remember total number, but it was it was crazy.
That's intimidating. I'm
Yeah,
actually
it was really
very happy.
crazy.
Yeah, that's not the case here.
All right, have you gotten threats?
Yes, I have.
hmm
You hear a couple
Um,
of them. Oh, go ahead.
like physical, like I'm gonna harm you threats, or legal threats, or both.
No direct legal threats. I mean, I think in any situation like this, you expect anyone can sue for anything.
hmm
But on the back end here, there's a lot of things that go into a podcast or a documentary or an investigation like this that people don't see. And so there is a legal team, insurance situations, and all kind of stuff that you have to take into account. So um, it's it's not like I'm just recording voiceover and putting out whatever I want. That's not how
Right.
this works. So legal threats, not really, but personal threats and suggestions of it, yes. I think because of the way the investigation started, which wasn't
Well,
about Don.
you've actually played some of those in the podcast.
Yeah, and I get so
Yeah.
many people asking who was that, and I just say, oh, think about it a little harder. And most people have figured out who it was. Not surprising to anyone. Um, I think that family who I mentioned in episode 1 is notorious for situations like that. And for whatever reason, they've gotten away with threats and intimidation for a long time. Not for whatever reason. I mean, I know why,
Yeah.
it's like political connections and, all those things. But
Yeah.
I have not been fearful of my own life, which a lot of people ask, only because I think in that small ecosystem, these so-called powerful people have convinced everyone that they are very powerful
Huh.
and that you will end up in a ditch somewhere, like was told to me. But at the end of the day, I made myself very public on purpose
hmm
because you then have a little bit more protection.
Yep.
So, am I careful? Do we have encrypted emails and phones that are like heavily secured and security when we're in town? Of course. But that's just for, the crazy who may want to do something. But anyway, that's enough about threats. That's not the exciting part.
Megan, all right. Yes. So I am planning to download this live, and I will upload it to my YT. I don't have many subscribers, so I need some subscribers. You can find it. It's linked in my link tree, which that link is at the top of my TikTok profile. So like at the very top of all of my videos, there's a link. If you'll click that link, it'll take you to my link tree page. And at the very top of that page, the very first link is the link to my YT. I'm also True Crime Mama on YT, but a lot of people have had trouble finding me that way. So I've actually linked my profile directly on my link tree at the top of my TikTok profile. So that is my plan. I cannot re-upload it here because anytime I re-upload a live here, then TikTok tells me it's unoriginal content and I get a violation. So I will put it on YT.
Awesome.
Right,
We had a lot of people on our Facebook group asking if we could upload the live, so we'll connect after.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think he's going to name any of the people at the airport.
Yeah, unfortunately, I get that question a lot. I think if you think hard enough about it, you figure it out.
All right. I'm not trying to cut you off, but I also don't want to keep you all night, and I feel like I probably could. So
No, I mean, if there's more questions or whatever, I mean,
okay, let's just see. All right, guys, if you have questions.
I did see one a second ago. They were asking how long it takes to go through tips that come in, and it takes a long time because there are a lot of people giving tips that aren't helpful or useful, almost like misinformation, like I've talked about before. But when a tip comes in, you have to corroborate what the person is saying, and you have to compare it to what you've been told before. So, and we don't have a huge team, despite what some naysayers on social media think about the podcast. And I'm trying to get rich off of this podcast. It's very much the opposite, and it's a small team. So yeah, it takes a while when people leave voicemails and send emails with lots of information. You have to go through with a fine-tooth comb because, again, we want to report the facts. I see a very specific name coming up in the comments a lot, and
Okay, Cajun Blonde. Is that what you're talking about? Cajun
Oh
Blonde?
no, it's a name that people keep commenting.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm like,
okay.
oh yeah.
Okay. So Cajun Blonde, and I'll text you this too, but Cajun Blonde left a tip today, and she wants to be sure that you know that she left a tip today.
Oh,
So,
I'll check. Okay.
and
Cajun
I'll
Blonde,
take
are you Cajun Blonde where you sent me a tip? Where can I check?
Holly.
Okay. All right.
She wrote it in the comments. I'm assuming it's okay for me to say it here.
Okay, yeah. Hey. Well, thank you. I'll check it out.
All right. The missing there was a missing bullet. Yes, there were two
Yes.
casings. Okay,
There were two
people will-
casings, a missing bullet. It's my belief that someone else was most likely fired upon. And I think based on the reaction of one of the suspects when asked about that, he mentions a very specific name, a doctor. So, it's speculation, but there were people around him who could have helped, heal up a wound.
So you do believe that second bullet actually struck someone?
It's one of my theories. I think that's probably most likely what happened because it was never recovered.
Yeah.
It's possible that she actually did fire out the window, like Tom, the investigator, said.
Mhm.
But that version of the story does not match what her boyfriend said to investigators. So it makes me think that there's a discrepancy there, and it's probably neither one of them are probably true.
And the doctor
There's
is
a lot
now
of unknown.
deceased? The doctor is now deceased?
Yes. The doctor mentioned by the boyfriend.
Tina's asking about the blood cleanup. Tina, we talked a good bit about that earlier. I don't know if there's anything else about that you want to add.
I think it was right in front of the bathtub, and state police did their spraying and searching, and it lit up blue, which reveals blood cleanup. Unfortunately, DNA can't be extracted from that because of the chemicals used. But it's absolutely clear that someone else was there because there was something cleaned up and there was an object taken off the bed. So whoever that
Right, yeah.
was,
At least one other person.
right. So let's just say it was a self-cancellation. Whoever was on scene did some things that will put them in prison for a long time. I don't think that's the case of what happened, but if that's the theory they want to go with, then just come forward.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So Megan says, so was the blood in the living room hers? I believe all the blood was hers in the house. Yes.
The droplets down the hall were hers, yeah. And there's been some reports that there were shoe prints in the kitchen and that kind of thing. Based on the information I have, that is not true. There are several people on scene who say there was some splatter or spatter near the back door. We do not have photos of that,
Okay.
but it comes from reliable sources that was the case. So again, it's really hard to know because we don't have the case file. If we did, obviously it would be a lot different. And we're just grateful that the state police have taken an interest in the case since we put the billboard up last year. And actually, that's actually kind of I think that comes out in episode 7. Locals know that we put a billboard up seeking information. And a few days later, the state police found the resources necessary to assign someone to the case. So as much criticism as I and the team gets for exposing the case and making it public, I think the facts speak for themselves. Making it public and having a public outrage does affect cases in real life.
Yeah. Glenda, I believe there was just one weapon, 2
Yes.
shell casings, correct?
1 weapon, 2 shell casings from the same weapon.
From the same weapon. Okay. Victoria says, is there a time of death?
I haven't revealed my theory yet. It will come out in a later episode because it's really difficult to narrow it down. I mean, but I'll share with you now, I guess, that
You don't have to. You don't have to share anything
so
that.
Donna. No, I can't. I mean, Donna's ex-husband received a phone call around 11 p.m. on Sunday night. She was distraught. She was upset, and so they had that phone call. That's corroborated by his girlfriend at the time, who was in bed with him at that time, and he's the last person that I'm aware of to actually speak to Donna on the phone or in person. And then, as you heard in episode 1 and 2, she sent text messages to several different people around 2 a.m. Monday morning saying, "I love you," which her sister Sherry says is not Donna. She wouldn't have sent that. She wouldn't have capitalized every word, all these different things. So whether or not we believe Donna sent those texts or not, let's just say she did. So it's pretty clear. She passed sometime between 11 p.m. and 2 or 3 a.m. and then wasn't found for many hours later until midnight Monday.
I'm trying to go through the comments. Some people are pointing out some comments. Is any of your team reading the comments?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm seeing the coroner can determine the time of death. Yes, the coroner can. However, because there's so many question marks on the case, and because the pathologist who performed the autopsy was being told by investigators, excuse me, he was being told by investigators that it was a self-cancellation, and his autopsy did not show that, it created a lot of turmoil, my understanding, between the coroner's office and the sheriff's office. And he was waiting on the state police crime lab to get him DNA results and information, and he waited and waited and waited, eventually scheduled a meeting with investigators at the coroner's office to tell them, look, I have to make a determination on this case. I can't keep waiting. Unless you've got something definitive from the state police, this was not a self-cancellation.
Mm-hmm.
And in the podcast you hear when I ask him, did you feel pressured to rule this self-cancellation? And he says, I'll refrain from saying anything about that, which in my mind tells us everything we need to know.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was trying to go back and find the comments I was looking for, but I only found one, and I don't know.
Let's see. I'll scroll a little bit too.
All right. Sheila wants to know who George is.
Okay, George is an older fella who's kind of, I guess, well known around town. He's been there forever. He lived there forever. I actually graduated with his niece in high school. He was a longtime friend of Donna's, and her cousin Tony, who you hear in episode 2 or 3, I forget now. Anyway, he was friends with a lot of people in Donna's life, and she would go over and hang out and watch football or watch movies. In no way is he connected to this whatsoever, other than just being one of the last people to hear from her.
So, all right. You never know what's going to happen in these lives. Apparently, and you guys tell me, because I've missed a bunch of comments, but there's someone in the comments saying that they were there at the house cleaning. Like, the person commenting is saying that they were there cleaning. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, apparently so.
Can y'all screenshot this if there's a comment that's useful?
Okay, so I wrote the username down, Jeffro883. Oh, somebody else saw it too. Oh, Jeffro883. Jeffro883.
Jeffro.
Hey, Jeffro883, we can get you 1,000 followers really quickly if you want to come live with us and tell us what it is you have to say.
Come on, Jeffro.
Just give me the word. I will send all of these folks to follow you.
Jeff Jenkins.
I just saw a comment about the doctor's house. We'll circle back to that.
Okay.
Unless you want to do it now. Who Who just said that he went to the doctor's house? What was that about?
Oh wait, Jeffro 883. Okay, I think this is probably a troll. I don't think anyone's really going to get on here and admit all of this. I was there moving her.
Oh, okay. I just saw the name. I just saw the name. I know who this is.
Okay.
I can't tell. Did you put your full name in here, or was that someone else? Because I'm not going to say it unless you put it yourself. Okay, so Jeff, yeah, Jeff is Donna's oldest son's dad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
Sorry, Jeff.
he was there with Donna's middle child, cleaning out the house and stuff. I'm not sure exactly what was shared, but yeah, Jeff was very much there cleaning out the house. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Jeff. Everyone was thinking that you were the unaliver.
No, Jeff, yeah, he was a big part of like getting her belongings taken to a flea market and kind of distributing items to the family and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Sorry, Jeff. I think everyone thought that though, because people were commenting that there was an unaliver among us, and there probably is, honestly.
I can tell you, I've seen a couple names pop up, and they're questionable.
You know, they always like to lurk, and sometimes they even like to comment.
Tonight. They are lurking tonight. I'll tell you.
Okay. Let me see.
I'm really curious about who said something about they went to the doctor's house. If you're still here, can you explain what that meant? Yes, Jeff did turn over electronics to WPSO. That's correct.
So Ashley says, do you know who it was that she was seeing from episode 1, and was he ever questioned?
Seeing from episode 1? I assume
was this the one that she was gonna break up with Scott because she was seeing someone else? Is that what you're talking about, Ashley? Or am I misremembering?
If that's what you're talking about, yes, we're aware of who that person is. He has been questioned and is not considered a suspect.
Okay. Ashley says yes.
My
memory is not
questioned by state police, so not just me, but state police. Oh, who she was walking around the fair with? That would be her boyfriend Scott, who we've talked about a lot in the podcast. Yes.
Please let us know what you think of Sheriff Seal's statements.
Sheriff Seal's statements.
Is this the new sheriff?
No, Sheriff Seal. He was elected in 2012, and he ran for a 4th term, and he lost last November to a man named Jason Smith, who's a local farmer and retired Marine. Sheriff Seal sued Jason and his farm for unpaid sales tax, which the sheriff in Louisiana collects. Jason won the case, and it became this huge controversy locally. Anyway, fast forward, Jason won the election. He's now the acting sheriff. And my thoughts on Randy's or Sheriff Seal's comments, I was blown away by what he did not know or claimed to not know.
Oh, yeah. I'm just thinking of him as Randy. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Randy. His answer for everything was, I just don't know, and I hire people to do their jobs. But like I asked him in the podcast, I mean, at some point with a high-profile case, when do you insert yourself? And if you don't insert yourself, then why are you the chief law enforcement officer that's been elected for your parish? The people expect you to insert yourself into difficult situations, and he never did that, and he blatantly admitted it, and honestly seemed kind of proud of it.
Yeah.
In terms of his vulgar comments about what my father should have done, I honestly thought it was funny, and I couldn't help myself but ask. And it seems that a lot of folks found that interesting. And I got a lot of messages after that episode saying, he said the same thing about so-and-so, and I heard him say this in the middle of Sugar Shack. And so,
There was a comment that I was trying to find. I can't. Somebody commented. It was asking about a case, but another case. I can't.
More.
Are there any appropriate crime scene photos that may be shared in the future?
we're being very careful about that, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
They're in a tight lock and key situation because there's a lot of folks who want access to them. I think we're considering which ones we might make public at some point, but it's definitely not going to be graphic. I mean, there's a lot of folks and a lot of, random people that I've never heard of who are asking for photos of Donna's remains, and that's never going to happen. So I'll put that out there now. That will never happen. There may be some that are shared that aren't graphic, but I guess someone asked about the O'Neill Moore case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you can do an episode next.
Yeah, that's a very touchy topic when it comes to, well, I'm not going to say that. Never mind. I'm going to get myself in a lot of trouble. O'Neill Moore was the first black deputy in Washington Parish. And in 1965, he was unalived in a drive-by. The KKK was responsible for that death. And there's a lot of questions about who was behind that. A lot of people suggest that a fairly high-ranking law enforcement official at that time, not necessarily with the sheriff's office, was active in the Klan and was behind it. There's also allegations that this person lived very close to where the attack happened. I'll be honest with you, I haven't done the depth of research on it that I want to do before I speak more about the case, but those are the generalities of what happened, and I'm very interested in figuring out what actually happened. And there are a lot of folks who are ready to talk. So
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Just a quick note, guys. Some of the comments are being filtered and hidden, and I'm not doing that. So I just want you to know that I'm not like singling people out and just hiding your comments. TikTok does that. And sometimes it makes no sense which comments get filtered and which ones don't. So I'm trying to uncover as much as I can, but I can't do everything.
Tyler,
Okay.
I will read hate mail at some point. I promised you guys I would.
Yes, Victoria, yes. You had a murderer on the loose and no one notified the public. Yes.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Tucker, what was the case that you told me earlier about the kid? What was that
Brett
child?
Whitner. Yeah, he was the
Is that,
14-year-old.
is that the Covington case?
Yeah, so Brett lived
Okay.
in St. Tammany Parish, but he was at a sleepover in Washington Parish where Donna's case occurred.
Oh, okay.
When he passed.
You want to say if you will do an episode.
Will I do an episode about that? Potentially. I know the local news station in New Orleans, WWL, has done a lot of investigating on that case, and I'm by no means going to step on their toes, but if something presents itself, we will look into it.
I'm reading some of these because some of these I've never heard of. Allen Parish, a ton of missing people the last couple of decades. Do you know anything about that?
I've gotten a couple emails about Allen Parish. What did you say, Allen Parish?
Allen.
Yeah. I wish we could cover every story we get
I know.
sent. I'm sure you feel the same way. It's it's like overwhelming.
It is. It's insane how much is out there, and how much is unsolved. I feel the same way. I wish I could do every case. I just can't.
Yeah. Well, the Nanette case that someone just commented, that's also a St. Tammany Parish case. Involves a lot of corruption from my understanding, but they're all on our radar, but Donna's is our focus right now.
How many episodes total?
8. So 8 for part 1. We got a couple more left. But I've always said there will be update episodes. So 9, 10, 11, 12. There's a lot of things that have happened in the last 6 weeks since the podcast launched. And we're obviously not going to keep you guys wondering what's happening. So, however, I will be taking a couple weeks off after episode 8 to catch my breath. But we'll have update episodes very shortly because this thing is developing pretty quickly.
Yeah. So the billboard was put up. When did you say?
Billboard was put up July of 2023.
Okay. And then the sign on the building was just recently put up, correct? Or no?
Well, we call it the billboard, but the original sign that was put up on the side of the building across from the sheriff's office, that was what we put up in July of 2023.
Okay.
Yep. And then the former sheriff put his campaign sign up next to it, and all the things that happened there. But that sign generated so much, not only interest in the public and notifying them what actually happened, but so much information. And we've gotten a lot of criticism for making it too provocative and making Franklinton look bad. But to be honest with you, I don't care if we make Franklinton look bad.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Like, to be honest with you, I could not care less what Franklinton looks like, because there's a woman who has been killed and no one seems to care. So
the locals shouldn't care what it looks like. You guys should just want the truth.
Right. Unfortunately, it's the never mind. I'll move on.
Okay. Well, they're probably locals too, though, right?
Yeah. We'll keep calling them locals.
No offense to you guys, like you local citizens.
No, you guys, honestly, and locals have been so supportive. It's unbelievable the amount of support and interest in Donna's case from people who live there, people I grew up with, went to high school with, my teachers, the people that work at the local gas station. It's just unbelievable.
People get sick of the corruption.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, as soon as they see like a little rip in the facade, it's just like they can't wait to share that they feel the same way. So it's been really promising. Better watch out. Oh, Lord, there's that name again.
Casey, why do we think this was a cover-up? I think you've already touched on that. And
yeah, I mean, I hesitate to say cover-up because I honestly feel like it's a combination of a lot of things, but it's a lot to do with pride and potentially realizing after the fact that they maybe didn't do what they should have done. And then it becomes a cover-up of incompetence. Not necessarily something crazy nefarious. It's just we look bad and now we're going to not look so bad.
Yeah, not necessarily because they're trying to protect someone.
Mm-hmm.
Just poor work.
And the sheriff himself said there was poor police work. So
let's see. All right. Madeline says, were there any suspects? Not officially. Not officially,
but if you saw the case file, you would know there are definitely suspects.
Yeah.
And there are people who were suspects who have been ruled out. Michelle, for example, Donna's ex-husband. Anything can change at any moment. But at this time, it's my understanding there's
no one has been named a suspect.
Yeah.
Officially.
All
right. Gosh, I hate to use names, but I guess this is just initials. Was TM swabbed for DNA?
You're trying to get me in trouble.
You can say pass. You can say pass.
Yeah, no comment on that one.
Okay. Is it true someone just released a lot of new evidence recently? I'm assuming that's what, episode 6? Maybe just the files you guys got? I wonder if that's what they're talking about.
It's probably what they're looking for. I'll say, like, post-podcast launch, there's been a lot of new information and a lot of people sharing information. So I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, but I assume it's what I mentioned at the end of episode 6, which is the anonymous upload.
Did Michelle take a lie detector?
To my understanding, no. From what I understand, when they confirmed she was on the flight, they called the airline. They confirmed she boarded her flight. They confirmed it was delayed. So it was clear that she was not there at the time of the death.
Okay. I'm going to look back through some things that I scratched down.
The ex of a suspect turned over a lot of new evidence recently. I'm not sure what you're talking about. The ex of a suspect. That's not true. No.
I'll let you look at.
Yeah, TA didn't want to dig deep because he knew Donna probably had info on a lot of good old boys. I don't know if that's true, but I do question why he was so convinced that it was a self-cancellation. Obviously, that's not news.
Somebody,
Yes. Oh, good.
and I did not get this whole thing, and it was a while back, so I'm not even going to try to scroll, but it was something about somebody who posted all of that on the page. Are they talking about the Facebook page?
I guess so. I mean, there's been a lot of information shared in the Facebook group, the Who Killed Donna Arceneaux Facebook group. We've done our best to moderate what we can, but also we don't want to moderate too much because it's an open forum, and we have gotten a lot of information from that. Lots of people comment who we didn't expect, and they don't realize that they're sharing valuable information that can be used in the investigation. So we'll keep them talking.
Chills. All right. So she says they want to know if we found out who posted the pictures.
I'm guessing they're talking about the anonymous upload.
That's what I'm guessing too. Yeah.
It is a truly anonymous upload, so like it's not like a Facebook page where you can see who's posting anonymously. The feature that we put on the website was purposely anonymous so that people felt comfortable sharing what they could. And obviously we had to corroborate that what they shared was legitimate. I am pretty sure I know who the individual was, but that information will never be made public.
Mm-hmm.
What were the items that were now missing? We talked about that earlier. I mean, it could have been a phone, a tablet, a computer, but in my opinion, it was a photo or a piece of paper or a document of some kind. There's a lot of questions here that I'm not going to read or respond to. I apologize.
Blood on the towel, Donna's. Yeah.
It's my understanding the blood on the towel was Donna's. Yes. Find this certain person on the page. She loves to talk. Yes, I'm very aware. I see it.
Jimmy, am I mistaken, or did I hear Robert say he was only at Scott's house to pick up a friend? If so, who?
The friend he's referring to is Scott. Scott called him to pick him up from the sheriff's office, according to him.
Yeah, that's right, Hope. There are definitely just some things that he can't respond to.
Yeah, I know it's annoying. I get annoyed when I see stuff like this too, but it's necessary.
Jazzy, she couldn't have she really couldn't have cleaned up her own blood, and that's one of the reasons that we know that it was not self-cancellation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doctor went by S house. That's very unclear. I just know that in my interview with him, he dropped that name, and it's of interest, I'll say.
Wait, say that again. What question?
Oh, it said, I'm not going to say the name.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
A certain doctor went by Scott's house.
Is that the
It's the same doctor he mentioned. He's now passed.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some question marks there. I'm not sure how it really plays into it, so I'm not going to say too much, but yeah, definitely of interest. So if you have some information, you're more than welcome to reach out.
Meg says, will they reopen the case? But the case is open.
Yeah, so that's one of the misunderstandings is the case is still open. And the state police do have a detective actively working the case. I understand they've interviewed several people recently, potentially have some new evidence. So I do believe the walls are closing in, and I'm not looking to take credit for that, but I do think that the overwhelming response from locals and people all over the country talking about the case has really put the pressure on, and I think it's working.
Will we possibly hear anything on the next 2 episodes from state police?
TBD.
Okay.
TBD. Yeah. It's a very active, fluid situation. So
Yeah, absolutely it is. All right.
Man, I recognize a lot of these names. You guys are really showing out with questions that I can't answer.
I'm really impressed that like our count has stayed like essentially at 800 the entire time, which is very
I saw
impressive.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. You guys are awesome. Thank you all for watching. We really appreciate you.
The theory on the missing bullet, where is it? We touched on that earlier. I think it's very possible someone else was hit with that bullet. Unfortunately, there weren't very detailed photos of people's bodies taken at the time of the investigation, so I'm not sure we'll ever know unless state police are interested at this point. All of Washington Parish on here. Yeah, y'all are nosy. That's true. I'm not mad at it.
For those of you just joining, I see a lot of questions coming up that we've already answered. I will upload this entire live. I'm going to do my best to my YT. And you can find that at the top of my TikTok profile. There's a link there. Just click that link and you'll see the first website linked on that page is the link to my YT. So I'm going to do my very best to get this uploaded. This whole live. I can't put it back on TikTok because I will get an unoriginal content violation. And they only allow so many before they take your account from you.
Let's not have that happen.
No.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you having me on. Honestly, I know there's still questions coming out. I just want to say.
Yeah, I mean, I may want to have you come on again, though.
Anytime. Let me know. Send me a text and we'll do it.
Awesome. I'm sorry I cut you off. I was excited about the potential to have you back on because this has been very interesting, and I think I've definitely enjoyed it. I think everyone watching has enjoyed it too.
Yeah, we really appreciate the support and try to just always bring it back home to justice for Donna. I never intended to be front and center, but it is what it is. And the case is important, so I'll do what I have to do to seek justice. So,
is this your first podcast?
It is my first podcast. My first.
Very impressive.
Yeah, I'm usually behind the camera and pulling the strings from behind the camera, but it's been a learning experience and I've enjoyed it. There's a lot of satisfaction in uncovering so much information that was not known before and then putting it out there. It's been a learning curve to do things like this because this is not my strong suit, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, you're awesome. I think that you're fabulous. So
You're awesome.
Keep doing it. We've enjoyed it and looking forward to the next 2 episodes. Guys, if you have not started listening to the Freeze Frame podcast, tell them where they can find it. I'll let you go ahead and just tell them a little bit.
Yeah, is this where I plug the whole thing? Yeah.
Yeah, this is that.
So yeah, Freeze Frame Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, YouTube, all the places you get your podcasts. You can go to freezeframepodcast.com where you can also listen to the podcast. You can also look at evidence from each episode. We post a small amount of items that we're able to on freezeframepodcast.com. You can get transcripts there. You can read how to review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, which helps get the story out. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say, because I've seen some of your videos. You're trying to get to 1,000 reviews, right?
Yes. It's really difficult to get picked as an editor's choice on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but when there's a lot of reviews, that makes a difference. And I think once we reach that, and I do have a feeling it's close. There's been some indications it's getting close, but the more people talk about it, the better. And that's our motivation. It has nothing to do with trying to reach a certain number of listeners. I mean, that honestly is not our interest. It's having publications and people in power be forced to look at and hear the story.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But if you've listened and you have not left a review, please go leave a review. If you have not listened, listen and also leave a review.
Please.
It's awesome. I'm a very tough podcast critic, and this is, somebody said it's one of the best I've ever listened to. Court 413 said that, and I 100% agree.
Court and True Crime Mama, I appreciate you guys. It's been a labor of love, but it's been worth it, and it will be worth it when this case has some resolution.
Ellie, justice for my mom, and all thanks to Tucker for everything.
Ellie, wait, hold on, Ellie. Oh man, you guys will hear from Ellie very soon. You heard from her on the radio when we did our interview on the 7th anniversary. She is honestly, and I've told you this directly, Ellie, but you are incredibly inspiring. For those of you who don't know, she turned 18 a few weeks ago and reached out to me a couple of days later. She wanted to make sure that what she shared was usable and people couldn't say that she was just a child or whatever. And I think the things that she witnessed are very important to this investigation. Mm-hmm. And just the passion that she has for ensuring that her voice is heard, I'm in awe. So you'll hear from Ellie very soon.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, well, you guys stay tuned, because I'm definitely going to plan on having you back for another live.
Please do.
Sounds like lots of information is coming, and I anticipate even more. And I think this is another good way to just get all of the information out, share the story. For sure. I will have him back. I promise I will. This has been
cool, Ellie, you've got so much support, man. I love seeing that. I get emotional when we talk about Ellie, so I apologize, but
no, it's okay, because I teared up a little bit too. Just being a mom, my daughter is just a little bit older than Ellie, just a year. So, yeah,
it hits home. It really does. And I waited and waited and waited, and I wanted to reach out to her for so long, but out of respect for her father. Mm-hmm. I didn't. And then when she reached out, it was a huge moment. I'll say that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys, check out the podcast, leave a review, and you can find the live. I'll try to get it up tonight. If not, I'll do it tomorrow on my YouTube channel. If you can't find it, send me a message and I'll help you find it.
We'll find it on YouTube and share it in the Donna group as well.
Go follow Tucker Freeze Frame Podcast. Go follow their TikTok page too, please. All right, guys. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate all of you guys.
Thanks everyone for joining, and thank you, True Crime Mama. I mean, this has been an honor, and thanks for highlighting Donna's story and helping us get the word out.
Absolutely. All right. Good night.
Good night, guys.